Lord God, I just pray that people here watching, that you will help us increase our knowledge and understanding so we can see how God's creative work in these animals that we're looking at today points us to our powerful God. Amen. Well, g'day. Welcome back to an exciting day where we get to explore God's creation of some pretty amazing land animals. And so we will begin in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. It's day 6A. God created land animals, and he explains it in this way. Let the earth produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock creatures, and creatures that move along the ground, and the wildlife of the earth, each according to their kinds. And it was so. So God made the wildlife of the earth according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and the creatures that creep and crawl on the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Did you notice the repetition of the words according to their kinds? So hoping you are remembering from last time that Genesis does not teach us that God created species that are limited and fixed. Rather, God shows us how he created a fixity of kinds with all the fish and birds. Naturally, what I said about God creating aquatic creatures and birds naturally also holds true for land animals. Animals can only breed within their kind. Once again, here on the first part of day 6, we see how God is entirely capable of creating a vast variety of different kinds of land animals, from the teeny tiny bugs to large wild animals to a variety of farm animals in a very short space of time, proving to us just how powerful our God really is. Unfortunately, all the kinds of animals God created cannot be covered in a short sermon, or even actually a very long one. So today, I'm just going to be focusing on animals everyone is interested in, like livestock. Just kidding. I'm going to talk about dogs, and how, because there are so many different breeds of dogs, they are often used to prove evolution. But firstly, what you need to realize is that they have not become a new kind or species of animal. They are all still dogs. You just see, despite what we have all been taught, evolution has not been the cause of the huge variety of dogs we have today. Instead, they have experienced planned natural selection by someone with the intelligence to create a new breed of dog. This cannot be classed as evolution, which is, as you are well aware, where new genetic information, along with the addition of new physical features and characteristics, transform the original animal to create a completely new and different species of animal. Now, breeders want to create a new type of dog, so they go and get 2 different breeds of dogs with some of the desired characteristics of the new breed to breed from, and then they selectively choose the pups with the desired characteristics to breed from next time, and so it continues until they have developed a new breed of dog with the characteristics they initially desired, which is what happened with boxers. I love boxer dogs, so I am very interested naturally in their history. And it's just over 100 years ago, the boxer was bred from a white old English bulldog and the Bull and Bison. And sadly, the bull and bison has become extinct due to this crossbreeding. You see, the genetic information that made the bull and bison the type of dog it was, it got lost in the process. In other words, a good way to see it is that the genetic info was dismantled beyond repair because there was this continual crossbreeding to create the new breed, the boxer. And there was no breeding between two full-blooded bull and bisons. So unfortunately, now there is no way to get the bull and bison back. And so this means the bull and bison breed is lost forever. But as wonderful as dogs are, and my two are lovely, I'm going to focus on an animal that God created, which has managed to fascinate and generate so much interest for more people worldwide than any other animal. Dinosaurs. Yes, we did talk about dinosaurs last time, but it was only in relation to discussing whether birds came from dinosaurs or dinosaurs came from birds. Now we get to really talk about dinosaurs. And oh wow, researching for this message was incredible. After only a week of research, there was so much information. And so here I was, getting excited, thinking at long last I will find some credible theories from evolutionists. But, once again, wrong. Their theories were all over the shop. The only constant I could find was the way scientists kept changing their theories to fit in with each new fossil find that contradicted their previous theories from their previous fossil finds. At times, I was also left hurt and bewildered about the way evolutionists and some Christians who believe in evolution belittle those who believe in a powerful God who was capable of literally creating the world and everything in it in 6 days by just speaking it into existence. I find it kind of weird because both parties are looking at exactly the same evidence. Yet due to evolution's starting hypothesis, they persist in seeing billions and billions of years from nothing to people, and in the process have developed very complicated theories to try and explain how dinosaurs evolved and then became extinct before humans even existed. Okay, so because I never asked anyone why, I'm not really sure why theistic Christians have to put you down for believing in God's creative work in 6 literal days. But once I thought about it, it was easy to realize why evolutionists had to belittle Christians who believe God created in 6 days. Because remember how the stated aim of evolution is to prove there is no such thing as God. Therefore, if they are wrong, not a good look for them really. I am sure we all agree it doesn't look good when you are wrong. And when you have been so dogmatic about it, well, that makes it even harder to admit you are wrong. But in this instance, it's not just about her pride, but also about acknowledging their future when they die that is at stake. And they do not want to face the idea that they could be choosing the wrong option. Now, there is not enough time to talk about only 4 of the current evolutionary theories concerning dinosaurs and animals. Yes, you are right. At the moment, there are at least 4 vastly different theories as to how animals evolved. I'm so glad I believe the Bible's version of how it happened. I reckon that's so much simpler than trying to decide which theory to believe and then discover once I had it all worked out, oh no, wait a minute, we need to change our thinking and create a new theory to match the new evidence. So rather than unpack 4 of the current theories and spend weeks on each of them, I will leave that up to you to go and check it out and look at least 4 of the theories for yourselves. I certainly found it interesting learning how evolutionists will adapt their theories to each new discovery that challenges their previous thinking, but how they will not consider any evidence that appears to point out how the whole long ages evolution scenario is standing on very shaky ground. And nowhere is that more evident than with dinosaurs. So what we will be doing is looking at some thought-provoking evidence from across the world that evolutionists have unequivocally rejected as proof that dinosaurs and man coexisted. Naturally, they count this evidence as myths and legends. And yet, I wonder, are they? Now, some of the evidence comes from first-hand witnesses, but because modern Western people do not have the attention or memory span of, say, 100 years ago, therefore, people then question, are they really telling the truth? And evolutionists go, that couldn't be. Then there is other evidence that seems undeniably legit, and yet it is simply rejected outright by evolutionists. Ultimately, it is up to you to decide whether the theory of evolution holds up to scrutiny, or does the evidence support biblical account that God created dinosaurs on the sixth day with animals, and therefore man and dinosaurs did live together at the same time. And don't worry, if you choose to believe in evolution, you don't have to justify your decision to me. After all, what you believe doesn't affect me. You see, it's not me you have to answer to. It is our God who has stated that He created everything in 6 literal days that you have to answer to. Now today, as we talk about dinosaurs, I know there are some amazingly clever people who are watching, and they have studied them, and unlike me, they can not only name and pronounce every dinosaur found and tell you where it has been found, they can also go into great detail about all the dinosaur bones that scientists had thought belonged to 2 or 3 dinosaurs, but have since discovered they were actually just 1 dinosaur. I was taken by surprise to learn that a well-known dinosaur fossil expert, Jack Horner, after diligently researching fossils, he realized how scientists have been confused because they didn't realize young dinosaurs are not simply scaled-down versions of adult dinosaurs. They develop different features as they grow. I find it surprising that they hadn't considered this before, as they do base their assumptions on how dinosaur bones function and what the dinosaur would have looked like in the flesh, on what they know and observe from living animals today. And when you consider how many young animals there are today who look nothing like their adult form. Oh, think of the tadpole. Certainly looks nothing like an adult frog. And if you consider our native cassowaries, those vicious, deadly birds who are used as evidence that dinosaurs came from birds, or vice versa, and it's due to their casques, that big dome thing on their head. Yet they don't develop their full casques until they are fully grown, which means juvenile cassowary skeletons look like a completely different bird. Why didn't evolutionists think of this before? Well, probably partly because they can't just go out and watch the dinosaurs growing. They can only look at their fossils. And while at times there are clues, like juvenile bones being spongier and having more pores in them than adult bones, though actually I don't understand how come bones that are millions and millions of years old are still spongy and porous is beyond me. Scientifically, it's impossible for that to happen. For even a fraction of that time, they disintegrate. So, as the majority of bones are not porous or spongy, how do they know whether it is a small dinosaur or a juvenile skeleton of a dinosaur previously discovered or not? Another big problem paleontologists face is that museums only want the spectacularly big and excitingly scary looking dinosaur fossils, which has led to virtually no fossil record of juveniles. And of course this makes them unfamiliar with the natural progression of fossils of the same species kinds. And perhaps thanks to all the media focus being on the scary dinosaur T-Rex, and so like I have, and maybe you too, paleontologists have assumed that all dinosaurs grow up to be huge like the T-Rex, whereas now it has been discovered how the majority of full-grown dinosaurs are usually only about somewhere between the size of a chicken and a sheep. They weren't the juvenile dinosaurs they had thought they were after all, but they were fully grown adult dinosaurs. Now, most people have been taught, and so naturally believe, that dinosaur fossil bones over millions of years have gradually, molecule by molecule, replaced the original substance of the bone with rock minerals, and so they must be very, very old, because after all, they have turned to stone. But while this misunderstanding is very common, it is also very misleading. For you see, bones do not have to be turned into stone to be fossils. And quite frequently, the dinosaur fossil will still contain original bone. In fact, the time frame for a bone to become completely permineralized is highly variable. For instance, modern bones that fall into mineral springs have been observed to become permineralized within a matter of weeks. Therefore, this means even a rock-solid, super hard fossil dinosaur bone showing under the microscope that all available spaces have been totally filled with rock minerals cannot automatically be assumed that it took millions of years to form. But the other thing we need to be aware of is that not all fossils have been permineralized. For you see, in Canada, they have found bone fossils which cannot be distinguished from modern bones. So, with all those variables, how does a person decide the age of these fossil bones? And once again, the starting viewpoint depends on what they believe. And as we have learnt, evolutionists are starting from their long ages hypothesis, and so they are convinced that all dinosaur bones must be at least 65 million years old. Yet what I am having trouble working out is, how is it that these totally unmineralized dinosaur bones, which are considered to be over 65 million years old, and yet they did not obey the scientific laws of thermodynamics and disintegrate from the natural random motions of the molecules within them, as scientists have observed happening with modern bones? Now, I must admit, what I do know about dinosaurs has come from evolutionary statements like millions of years ago when massive dinosaurs ruled the earth. Okay, massive is often unspoken, but the combined visual effect of seeing an enormous, vicious, angry-looking T-Rex said massive to me for them. And perhaps this is why evolutionists firmly believe that there is no way dinosaurs and humans, or even with other large mammals, could have existed together. They argue that dinosaurs could not have possibly existed with other large mammals because of the competition from living in similar environments. And their final clincher is, due to their ginormous size and their aggression, dinosaurs would have attacked and overrun human settlements. But do these arguments hold water? And hopefully you remember how they use their observation of today's animal world to help them understand how evolution worked. So if we compare what we see happening in today's animal world, do we observe animal behaviour that backs up their argument? Firstly, let's give the size of dinosaurs a bit of perspective by comparing them to animals we know today. And you probably already know this. The largest mammal creature to ever exist on the earth, and believe it or not, they still do exist today, is the blue whale. And blue whales are miles larger than the largest dinosaur discovered so far, the massive Tyrannosaurus argentinosaurus huensulensis, which has been estimated to weigh around 50 to 96.4 metric tons, making this dinosaur a mere featherweight when compared to the blue whales, who have an actual recorded weight of 172 metric tons. And crikey, that makes the blue whale between 75 and 122 metric tons heavier than the massively largest dinosaur found so far. Now, I am sure you are all well aware that blue whales manage to coexist along with sharks, killer whales and dolphins in the same waters while they are all hunting similar fish for their food. Now, paleontologists have estimated that T-Rex weighed around 6 to 8 tons and possibly ran around 17 kilometres an hour. Guess what though? That is around the same weight as an elephant, but elephants have been clocked at up to 24 kilometres an hour. Yet I think we can agree that neither elephants or giraffes, who are as tall as any T-Rex and are known to run as fast as 60 kilometres an hour, do not rule the African plains. And then we have the powerful meat-eating predators like the lions, king of the jungle, cheetahs, leopards, hyenas, etc., who all feed on similar prey. Yet they manage to coexist on the African plains. As the above observational evidence shows, dinosaurs may not have ruled the earth. So it looks like that paleontologists only use observational evidence when it fits in with their evolutionary theory scenario, and not when it doesn't fit in. And as we have seen, the observational evidence from some of today's animals show how they are coexisting in competing environments. Therefore, this evidence does seem to logically support the idea that dinosaurs could have easily coexisted with other animals and the people that God created on day 6. But is that enough evidence to conclusively state God did create dinosaurs on day 6? No way. But wait, for there is more. It was fun researching all the fascinating information about dinosaurs. I didn't realise that it was less than 200 years ago when Sir Richard Owen invented the word dinosaur to describe those unknown reptile fossils that were being discovered all around the world. But what is truly fascinating is how there are stories from all over the world of people seeing these huge reptile-like creatures. They refer to them in their languages as monsters or dragons. Oh yeah, right, pull the other one. Dragons and monsters are myths. You don't expect me to believe in them, do you? Well, that was my thinking too. But then I discovered how the dictionary defines a dragon as a kind of monstrous winged serpent or lizard. And the dictionary also went on to describe dragons as legendary animals. And while I think they meant legendary as in the sense mythical, I wonder whether they may have been having a two-way bet in using the word legendary. Perhaps they were also thinking it could be in the same sense as in the way we talk about Don Bradman's legendary skills with the bat. I wonder whether it is possible that perhaps these people were considering that dragons could possibly be real animals. After all, when you consider this, the 100 years after Sir Richard Owen first came up with the term dinosaur, the 1949 Encyclopaedia Britannica noted how dinosaurs were astonishingly dragon-like. The writer assumed that people believing in dragons did so without the slightest knowledge of dinosaurs. And then I discovered that because of the similar meaning in the two terms, the early paleontologists often switched between the terms dinosaur and dragon as they described the fossils they had found. And even just recently, in 2004, a donated dinosaur skull was described as looking very dragon-like, with its head having a long muzzle, spiky horns, bumps, and teeth that were dragon-like. Then, if we go way back in history to Alexander the Great, who after invading India, he reported seeing a great hissing dragon living in a cave. Now, I am fairly sure we would all agree that Alexander the Great would not need to make up a scary dragon story to be considered a conquering hero. Then later on, there are records of Greek rulers buying alive dragons from Ethiopia. Then there's this dude, Herodotus, who is well known for the way he systematically collected materials and tested them for accuracy. So I reckon it's a fairly safe bet to assume that Herodotus liked being positively, definitely sure that what he said was 100% accurate. So after hearing about some winged serpents, he writes how he went to Arabia, near the city of Buto, and saw such quantities of bones and spines of serpents that it's impossible to describe. They had the form of a serpent, like the water snake, and they had wings without feathers, like the wings of a bat. He also goes on to precisely describe their size, coloration, and reproduction. Now, what he describes in meticulous detail sounds astonishing like a pterosaur. Interestingly, evolutionary zoologist Desmond Morris writes, "In the world of fantastic animals, the dragon is unique. It is as though once there really existed different dragon species who mysteriously became extinct. Indeed, as recently as the 17th century, scholars wrote as though dragons were scientific fact, describing and recording their anatomy and natural history in painstaking detail." Perhaps if people stopped thinking of dragons as imaginary and mythical, then just perhaps we might be able to see them as the same dinosaur, dragon, animal kind that God said he created on day 6. Evolutionist Adrienne Mayer spent considerable time researching the puzzling account of why Native Americans had these incredible stories describing this large lizard who had killed an Indian as he was attempting to kill it. She ended up concluding that possibly the Native Americans had dug up dinosaur fossils. The problem with her assumption is that in their narrative, the natives had vividly described how the large lizard had a very tough, scaly hide that no matter how hard he tried, the Indian couldn't penetrate it with his lance. Did you think like I did? How can the Native Americans give such a detailed description of the hide if they had dug up fossil bones? No hide on fossil bones. Adrienne Mayer did eventually admit that this doesn't work, as Scandinavia also has many stories of dragons and sea monsters, but has long been considered barren of large fossils. But is she right when she goes on to say that many dragon images were based on exaggerations of living reptiles? Perhaps it was her starting assumptions that dragons are myths and didn't exist, along with the idea that dinosaurs were ruling the earth millions of years ago, which may have stopped her from seeing the possibility that these people were telling the truth and talking about live creatures that they had seen in the flesh. Though I must admit that part of me did wonder whether they may have exaggerated with the fire-breathing thing to make themselves sound more heroic. You know, just like young guys do when bragging about their dangerous stunts. Then again, who am I to say that God couldn't create fire-breathing animals? As God ended up showing me, a fire-breathing animal is mentioned in Job, the Leviathan. All right, I don't really think God would be into promoting myths about fire-breathing dragons. Do you? Yet listen to what he clearly says to Job. When it snorts, flashes of light are thrown out, and its eyes look like light at dawn. Flames blaze from its mouth. Smoke pours out of its nostrils as if coming from a large boiling pot over hot fire. Its breath sets coals on fire and flames come out of its mouth. The atheist astronomer Carl Sagan once remarked, the pervasiveness of dragon myths in the folk legends of many cultures is probably no accident. He then tried to explain away the similarities of dragons with dinosaurs by saying, they are fossil memories of the time of dinosaurs, come down to us through a general mammalian memory inherited from the early mammals, our ancestors, who had to compete with the great predatory lizards. Really? Our memories can be inherited while the rest of our body is evolving into some totally new, different creature many times over until we're people. And then, haven't we heard evolutionists say that large mammals didn't coexist with dinosaurs? And Samuel Bocard from the 17th century describes a live winged serpent that he saw, writing, if on your travels you encounter the serpent with wings who circles and hurls himself at you, the flying snake, hide yourself because of its reputation. Lie down when the snake appears and guard yourself in alarm, for that snake's manner is to go away calm, considering it a victory. There are winged and flying serpents that can be found who are venomous, who snort and are savage and kill with pain worse than fire. Now, this is not from a fiction story, but an excerpt from his own travel diary. And then there are many, many places around the world where you can see carvings or old statues or drawings that depict dragons. Wikipedia describes them as sources of inspiration for dragon myths. I think this was meant to be a negative heading, and I'm only going to talk about 2 of those carvings, but do look all of them up, for they certainly make for fascinating reading. I'm going to show you this picture of several bones claimed to belong to the Waywell dragon, which was killed by a peasant, and the bones are hanging outside the Waywell Cathedral. I gotta admit, they are a bit hard to make out in the picture. And so to know for sure, it's a bit hard to know what they are really. But evolutionists say the bones actually belong to a Pleistocene mammal they dug up. Fascinating. They have certified the bones as belonging to a Pleistocene mammal, but have decided they can't possibly be a dragon. Why? What I found interesting is how evolutionists call Christians who believe in 6 literal days of creation literalists and closed-minded, and will not accept evidence from real science. But the following article totally confirms to me that really is the kettle calling the pot black. Really, from this, who is not accepting the evidence? You see, there's this guy, Rob, who was writing a travel blog. And he says, finally, we found it. An artifact, inherently out of place. A stegosaurus, carved an inch deep in the sandstone wall and surrounded by lifelike and recognisable images of monkeys, lizards, buffalo and goats, all of which belong here. Until seeing it, I had my theories. No, it hasn't been added later by some prankster. I can absolutely guarantee this. It's carved in a huge block of stone that forms part of a temple wall and is cut at the same depth as all the surrounding lithographs. So it's utterly impossible that someone moved a previous image and cut this one in its place. This picture looks an awful lot like a stegosaurus. In fact, it doesn't look like anything except a stegosaurus. The only possible explanation, and therefore the one I must accept, is that it's actually a carving of some other creature that just happens to resemble a stegosaurus. But what creature that could be, I have no idea. So let's take a look at the Angkor Stegosaurus. Okay, I don't know what you think from the picture, but I believe he has seen a stegosaurus, but then is weirdly denying it can be a stegosaurus, even though all the other images are of animals the Angkor people would have seen every day. So why is it so hard for Rob and others to believe the Angkor people did a carving of a stegosaurus because they had really and truly seen one with their very own eyes? Think about it. So not so long ago, people in Africa would have seen the dodo bird every day, but sadly, they are no more. They are extinct. Naturally, neither you or I have seen one, but we believe they exist. We need to think long and hard about why is it that we believe the dodo existed, but not stories about dragons that look like dinosaurs. I wonder, could it have something to do with who is telling the story, whether it is a white person or a native giving the narrative? It was only a few years ago I was lucky enough to see a platypus in the bush, and that was like for a couple of seconds, blink and I would have missed it. And then when you think how it was, only about 250 years ago, the people in England couldn't believe that the platypus was a real animal, even though they had a mummified one to look at. And coming even closer to our time, Central African villagers living in a remote area reported seeing a swamp-dwelling animal known to them as the Mokele Membe, the blocker of rivers. The natives described the animal as having a squat body, about the size of a hippo or elephant, and it lives mainly in the water. During the day, it climbs the shore using its long neck to pluck leaves and fruit from the plants at the water's edge. Witnesses' drawings show that the Mokele Membe bears a strong likeness to a sauropod dinosaur, known to us by its fossil skeletons as the Apatosaurus. In 1983, there was a scientific expedition to find the animal. Biologist Marcelin Agnangana described what he saw, saying, "At approximately 2:30 p.m, we observed a strange animal with a wide back, a long neck and a small head. The animal was located about 300 metres from the edge of the lake in shallow water. And we were able to get about 240 metres from the animal, which, becoming aware of our presence, started looking around. Dikumbu, a local villager, was shouting with fear. The frontal part of the animal was brown, while the back part of the neck appeared black, and it shone in the sunlight. The animal was partly submerged and remained visible for around 20 minutes, with only the neck and head above the water. Then it submerged completely. No further sighting of the animal took place. We are certain that the Mokele Membe is quite alive, and furthermore that it is known to many inhabitants of the Likula region, an area of swampland about the same size as Florida. Then, 16 years later, in December 1999, near Boboa, Papua New Guinea, a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, along with a church elder, saw an animal which they described as having a body as long as a dump truck and nearly 2 metres wide, with a long neck and a long, slender tail. It was walking on 2 hind legs, as thick as coconut palm trunks, and had 2 smaller forelegs. The head was similar in shape to a cow's head, with large eyes and sharp teeth as long as fingers. The skin was likened to that of a crocodile, and the creature had largish, triangular scoops on the back. Then in 2000, British zoologist Bill Gibbons went to southeast Cameroon to check out if the reports of a creature whose description matched the Mokele Membe in Congo were in fact true. He was painstakingly careful when interviewing the Baka people from across many different communities to ensure there was no bias towards choosing animals the rest of the world believes are extinct or a myth. Gibbons strongly believed the Baka Pygmies' intimate knowledge of the region would make these people an accurate source of information. And so this was the first time they had been interviewed regarding these creatures. And then, to add further credibility to their answers, they were not told why Gibbons asked them to identify animals they knew from the pictures he showed them. And Gibbons started with animals they would know before showing them pictures of animals that they certainly would not know, like the American brown bear and the hyena. Significantly, the natives also did not recognise dinosaurs like the T-Rex, the Dimetrodon, or the pterodactyl. However, every native got very excited when they saw pictures of the sauropod dinosaurs and the triceratops, and they all would pick out the sauropod dinosaur as being most like the Mokele Membe. While it was clear they respect and fear the Mokele Membe and the Ngubu, which they identified as looking like a triceratops, but they said the female neck frill was different. It was also clear they consider them just like any normal animal they see in their everyday lives, like the elephants or the gorillas. Now, it was interesting to learn that evolutionists have actually for a long time considered that sauropods might have spent much of their lives in the water. So how is it that the Baka natives, who have not heard about dinosaurs, specifically highlighted the river as the home of the Mokele Membe, and they gave a detailed description of the creature's habits, saying they are extremely shy about human contact, hiding in the trees and reeds and other vegetation, so that it is only briefly glimpsed before it quickly retreats, disappearing into the deep pools. The other fascinating fact the Baka highlighted was the ferocity of the Mokele Membe as it defends its territory from competitors. So where a Mokele Membe lives, there will be no hippos, no elephants, or no crocodiles. Now, I'm sure we know that the hippo has been scientifically documented as the most ferocious of the animals in Africa. Yet, when the natives were asked about how the lekele bembe, which by all accounts is a small-mouthed herbivore, succeeds in fighting a hippo or an elephant or a crocodile, the baka explained that it simultaneously lashes with its tail while darting at its opponent with its snake-like head. I reckon getting attacked from two fronts would make anyone run. Now, people who believe dinosaurs have been extinct for millions of years tend to believe that the baka pygmies are talking about some legendary animals from their folklore. Yeah, I think we can agree that, considering how the Baka natives, and then those in Congo and the Papua New Guinea people, who obviously do not know each other, which then makes it highly unlikely that all of them could come up with the same legends describing an animal with virtually the same appearance and with almost identical behaviours and habits. And then, what about our own Aborigines with their narratives of a creature who inhabits weedy swamps and creeks, whose terrifying howl of a night and the way it abducts people and kills animals makes it a fearsome animal, one they know as the bunyip. So after the discovery of a supposed bunyip bone, a Geelong newspaper reporter had an Aboriginal draw a picture of the bunyip, and then he independently checked with many tribes who had no contact with each other, and they all identified the animal bone and the picture as being a bunyip. So let's have a quick look at the picture of the bunyip he showed them. Now, those smart people who know lots about dinosaurs, and while this is not the original drawing, it is based upon the descriptions given at the time. So it's kind of like a police photo kit of a suspect from a witness's description. But what do you reckon? Does it kind of look like a duck-billed dinosaur to you? And yet it wasn't until 13 years after the Aboriginals identified the reporter's drawing as the bunyip that the duck-billed dinosaurs' fossils were found. Now, one of the things that I have always struggled with is how commentators have alternately ascribed either a hippo or an elephant as the animal God calls behemoth in Job. Really? They just don't come close to matching the description of the behemoth's tail? Yet, as we learned, every one of the natives, when describing the animals they have seen, mentioned its long tail as one of its distinguishing features, making the lekele bembe or the mokele memembe sound very like God's description of behemoth. See what you think as you listen to God's description. Look at the behemoth which I made along with you, and which feeds on the grass like an ox. See now what strength he has in his loins, and the power in the muscles of his belly. He hangs his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are close knit. His bones are tubes of bronze, bones like bars and rods of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Now, I think it would be strange for God, who starts his interrogation of Job by saying this to him: "Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge?" So by saying things that are not true. Think about it. God begins ticking off Job because Job has been spouting off saying things that are not true about God. And so God starts interrogating Job by demanding he tells God what he knows about animals like lions, mountain goats, deer, wild donkeys, oxen, and then birds like ostriches, hawks, and eagles. And he also gives an awesome description of a horse. Now, I'm sure you would all agree that all of those animals are animals that Job would know very well. So why then would God suddenly throw in animals called Behemoth and Leviathan if they were not animals Job had personally seen, when God has been plainly letting Job know he doesn't know as much about these animals he has seen in his life as the God who created them does? Wouldn't that make God a super lying hypocrite? And personally, I don't reckon God is either a hypocrite or a liar. Now, I could go on and on with examples, but we do need to stop, or otherwise this sermon will go on and on forever. So please do go and check out the evidence for yourself. So here's a quick recap. Why is it not conceivable that dragons are dinosaurs, or vice versa, dinosaurs are dragons? Why is it not considered probable that they are one and the same, just named differently due to when the original dinosaur fossils were found? And they were believed to be a previously unknown animal to mankind. And dragons were believed to be myths, so they created this new name for the fossils, dinosaurs. Personally, after this research, I am now thinking that the big sauropod dinosaurs do make a very good contender for God's description to Job of an animal that is chief or first of the ways of God. And really, when you think about the description, tail like a cedar, it certainly rules out the hippo or elephant with their skinny, tiny little tail. This does leave creatures like the Lakele Bembe or the Mokele Memembe, who match the description of a sauropod dinosaur as prime candidates to be the behemoth. Yet, we find evolutionists like paleontologist Donald Prothero showing their evolutionary bias when he says this. They think that if they found a dinosaur in the Congo, it would overturn all of evolution. It wouldn't. It would just be a late occurring dinosaur. But that's their mistaken notion of evolution. Wait a minute. That doesn't make sense. A late occurring dinosaur, when they say they died off 65 million years ago and didn't live with man, maybe it's their own mistaken notion of evolution and their strong desire to continue keeping God out of the picture that has caused them to come up with that scenario. What do you think? Mind you, before you decide to make up your own mind, perhaps it would be a good idea for you to go and check out the fascinating dragon or just dinosaur scenario for yourself. Naturally, asking God to give you the Holy Spirit to help you to discern which explanation about dinosaurs and dragons could be legit. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want God to start interrogating me by asking me, who is this that makes my purpose unclear, that darkens my counsel by saying words without knowledge, things that are not true. Amen.